What happens when the city built on dreams suddenly feels like a nightmare? For decades, Las Vegas promised neon lights, jackpots, and the chance for ordinary people to live like royalty, if only for a weekend. But behind the Strip's dazzling skyline, another reality is spreading. Tourists are vanishing, and in their place, tents and shopping carts are lining the sidewalks. How did America's entertainment capital become a stage for despair? Stay with me until the very end, because what's happening beneath the bright lights of Vegas is more shocking and more revealing than any casino headline. Number 9. The hidden city beneath the Strip. Imagine walking into a glittering casino, music pulsing, dice rolling, drinks flowing. Now imagine that just beneath your feet, in a 600-kilometer network of storm drains, more than 1,500 people live in total darkness. They're called mole people, not because they chose it, but because Las Vegas left them no other place to exist. These aren't just nameless figures. They were once bartenders, construction workers, veterans, ordinary people who fell one step too far behind in a city that gives no second chances. Why underground? Above the surface, rents have climbed past $1,700 a month for a one-bedroom, while many residents, especially retirees, survive on barely $1,450 in Social Security. The math doesn't work, and when there's nowhere else to go, the storm drains become housing. But they're no shelter. A single flash flood can sweep away everything, belongings, hope, even lives, in minutes. This is the paradox of modern Vegas. Billions spent on new mega resorts and Formula One races, while just blocks away families huddle in tunnels reeking of mold and sewage. For tourists, the city is marketed as the ultimate gamble. For these residents, survival itself is the gamble. Every day, every storm, every decision. And yet, this underground reality is just the beginning. Because what's happening above ground, in the neighborhoods locals once called home, is even more haunting. Number 8. The vanishing neighborhoods. Picture this. A once bustling Vegas strip mall where families lined up for cheap pizza, locals dropped by the barber, and neighborhood restaurants thrived. Today, the same storefronts sit boarded up, for lease signs hanging indefinitely, the parking lots eerily quiet. This isn't an isolated block. It's spreading across the valley like a slow-motion implosion. According to recent accounts, thousands of small businesses in Las Vegas have permanently closed in just a few short years. Unlike the mega casinos, these weren't billion-dollar corporations with investor backing. They were sandwich shops, pharmacies, family-owned restaurants, the places that made neighborhoods feel alive. Operating costs surged more than 40%, while customer traffic shrank by half. Even as tourists still flock downtown, locals either can't afford to eat out or have fled entirely. This exodus has a chain reaction. When families leave, schools lose students, property values stagnate, and entire communities hollow out. For the few residents who remain, daily life becomes lonelier, more dangerous, and less connected. A city without its small businesses isn't really a city. It's a stage set, glossy on the surface, empty once you step behind the lights. Demographics are amplifying the crisis. Young families are choosing to move to Utah, Arizona, or Idaho, where the cost of living is lower and community ties still hold. That migration wave leaves behind an aging population and, increasingly, the homeless, people who can't leave even if they wanted to. The cruel irony? While corporations build new luxury towers and golf courses, the neighborhoods that once gave Vegas its soul are fading into memory. The Strip glitters brighter than ever, but the city around it is growing darker. And if you think closed shops and silent neighborhoods are troubling, wait until you see what rising costs are forcing the city's elderly into. It's even more heartbreaking. Number 7. The retirement dream that turned into a nightmare.
Las Vegas was once marketed as the ultimate retirement escape. Warm winters, cheap buffets, and affordable homes compared to California. Thousands of retirees packed up their lives, believing they'd spend their golden years in comfort. But today, for many seniors, Vegas feels less like a haven and more like a trap. Here's the cold reality. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment now exceeds $1,700 per month, while the average Social Security check is only about $1,450. That math leaves a gap even before groceries, medicine, utilities, or gas are factored in. For an aging population living on fixed incomes, every bill becomes a brutal choice: rent or food, medication or electricity. This isn't theoretical. Across the valley, elderly residents are spotted at Walmart near closing time, picking through wilted, discounted produce because it's all they can afford. Some skip meals altogether just to keep a roof over their head. Others cut pills in half, stretching prescriptions they can't refill. In a city with billion-dollar casinos flashing wealth around the clock, seniors are quietly calculating which basic need they'll sacrifice next. Organizations like Catholic Charities and Nevada Hand are fighting back, building affordable housing, serving meals, and helping with rental paperwork. But demand far outpaces supply. Waiting lists for subsidized housing stretch 12 to 18 months, a cruel timeline for people who need shelter now. For too many, the so-called promised land of retirement in Vegas has turned into a relentless gamble, one where survival odds dwindle with every passing month. And here's the darker twist. While retirees struggle just to breathe financially, younger generations face a different crisis, one that's pushing entire families into impossible situations. Number 6. Families falling through the cracks. When you think of homelessness in Las Vegas, you might picture single men or people battling addiction. But increasingly, it's families, parents, kids, even infants, who are ending up without a roof. The most unsettling part? Many of them don't technically qualify for emergency aid. According to reports, only about 40% of the homeless in Las Vegas receive adequate support for reintegration. The rest live in a gray zone, not desperate enough for immediate intervention, yet nowhere near stable enough to recover on their own. A mother working 2 jobs but unable to cover rent. A father evicted after a sudden medical bill. Families who once had steady lives now face nights in their cars, rotating between shelters, or sleeping on sidewalks where waking up every morning is already a battle. The system meant to catch them is overloaded. A social housing application can take 12 to 18 months just for a response. That's long enough for a child to spend 2 birthdays without a home. In the meantime, families learn to normalize suffering, eating less, hiding in parking lots, staying quiet when pushed away from shelters. Over time, poverty becomes less about lacking money. It becomes a corrosive state of mind, where people start to believe they deserve nothing better. And yet, while these families fight to survive, city policies often focus less on providing shelter and more on cleaning up the streets. Camps are swept overnight, belongings dumped into garbage trucks. For the families caught in the middle, the message is clear. Survival is your problem. Visibility is ours. But if families are already falling through the cracks, what happens when the very safety nets they rely on are ripped away overnight? The answer lies in the next, even harsher chapter of Vegas's story. Number 5. The crackdown, not the cure. If you walk just a few blocks off the Strip at night, you'll see tents tucked under overpasses, makeshift beds in doorways, and families huddled in cars. But by morning, many of those scenes are gone, not because people were helped, but because they were swept away. Las Vegas has increasingly turned to cleanups of homeless camps, where belongings are seized without warning. Blankets, IDs, prescription medication, even old family photos. Everything is treated as trash, scooped up by garbage trucks, while the people themselves are pushed elsewhere. Not housed, not supported, just erased from sight.
The policy logic is simple: protect tourism. The Strip generates billions in gaming and hospitality revenue, and city leaders fear that visible poverty will scare visitors away. But this strategy creates a cruel paradox. Instead of investing in safe shelters, long-term housing, or integrated healthcare, authorities shuffle the homeless from block to block, a shell game of human lives. Residents who've paid taxes for decades are treated like glitches in the city's glossy image. The human cost is staggering. A 70-year-old man lost his only mementos when his tent was bulldozed. A pregnant woman was turned away because the shelter had no space that Friday night. These aren't rare stories. They're everyday reality in a city that hosts world-class conventions and charges $1,000 a night for hotel suites. And here's the dark irony. The crackdown doesn't solve homelessness. It spreads it. Families scatter into parking lots, tunnels, and desert outskirts, making them harder to track, harder to help, and far more vulnerable. The city may look cleaner on the surface, but beneath, the problem festers. So while Vegas tries to sweep away its human crisis, the people left behind face something even more relentless: the desert itself. And that fight is deadly.
Number 4. The desert heat and deadly climate reality. In Las Vegas, danger doesn't only come from losing your last dollar at the blackjack table. It comes from the sky itself. For thousands living without shelter, the desert climate is a slow-moving death sentence. Summer in the valley regularly brings temperatures soaring past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 43 degrees Celsius. For someone without a home, that means hours of exposure on scorching pavement, where even shaded underpasses radiate heat like ovens. Hospitals see waves of heat stroke victims every summer, and homeless residents are disproportionately among them. Without air conditioning or steady access to water, simply surviving the day becomes a gamble more dangerous than any slot machine. And then there's the other extreme. Winter nights in Las Vegas can plunge near freezing. A thin blanket in a nylon tent or the backseat of a car is no defense. The underground storm drains, where around 1,500 people live in darkness year-round, may shield from the sun, but they bring another deadly risk: flash floods. Just minutes of rain in the suburbs can send walls of water roaring through the tunnels like a black tsunami. Survivors describe losing everything: blankets, food, even friends, swept away in an instant. These extremes expose a cruel truth. The homeless in Las Vegas are battling nature without armor. A city that spends billions on cooling casinos and air-conditioning football stadiums can't provide safe, climate-controlled shelters for its most vulnerable. The result? The desert wins, over and over again. And if the heat and floods don't take everything, another threat does: the slow erosion of dignity through addiction, poverty, and cycles that become nearly impossible to escape. Number 3. Addiction, poverty, and the endless cycle. Every city has its struggles with poverty, but in Las Vegas, the stakes are amplified by something unique: the constant presence of temptation. In a city designed around vice, alcohol, gambling, and quick highs, slipping once can mean sliding into a cycle that's almost impossible to escape. For many, it begins with something ordinary: a lost job, an unexpected hospital bill, or rent that suddenly spikes beyond reach. With no savings buffer, nearly 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency expense. People fall fast. On the streets, desperation meets opportunity. Cheap drugs, easy alcohol, the fleeting relief of a slot machine promising escape. Addiction isn't the cause of homelessness here as much as it is the consequence. Once you're down, Vegas offers countless ways to sink lower. This cycle feeds on itself. Without an address, you can't get a job. Without a job, you can't rent. Without shelter, mental health spirals, substance abuse deepens, and survival becomes the only focus.
Nonprofits like Help Hope Home and the Nevada Homeless Alliance fight to break this loop, but resources are stretched thin. Every day, dozens more fall through the cracks, while only a fraction get the long-term care they need. And here's the bitter irony. Las Vegas, the city that markets itself as an escape from reality, traps its most vulnerable residents in a reality they cannot escape. Addiction here isn't just personal tragedy. It's economic gravity pulling entire families downward, one generation after another. But while addiction tightens the cycle, city policies often reinforce it, reducing people not to neighbors in need, but to problems to be moved out of sight. And that brings us to the next, even colder truth. Number 2. Policies, enforcement, and the disappearing human dignity. What defines a modern city? Its glittering skyline, or how it treats those with nowhere else to go? In Las Vegas, the answer is increasingly uncomfortable. On paper, the city holds endless meetings, drafts budgets, and announces initiatives. In practice, the homeless often experience only the cold edge of enforcement. Camps are cleared overnight, belongings swept into garbage trucks without warning. A tent isn't just a tarp and poles. It might hold medicine, a phone charger, a family photo, or the last shred of stability someone owns. When that's gone, so is their sense of self. City leaders talk about improving urban experience for visitors, but for the locals on the margins, the experience is humiliation. A 70-year-old man watched his tent bulldozed during a routine cleanup. A 6-month pregnant woman was turned away from a full shelter on a Friday night. These aren't isolated incidents. They reveal how dignity itself is stripped from people who once paid taxes, worked regular jobs, and trusted this city. Nonprofits like Catholic Charities and Help Hope Home provide lifelines, meals, rental aid, community outreach. But they are small boats trying to bail water from a sinking ship. The larger system prioritizes appearances over solutions. As long as the strip looks polished, the crisis can be shuffled out of sight. Yet what happens when a society no longer protects its most vulnerable? When policies push people deeper into despair rather than lifting them up? Las Vegas is showing us that line, and the world is watching. And now, we arrive at the final, most sobering truth. Survival here is not just hard. It's a gamble that many have already lost. Number 1. The survival gamble. Can Las Vegas face its darkest hour? Las Vegas built its reputation on risk, on the idea that anyone could walk into a casino and walk out rich. But for thousands of residents today, the gamble isn't blackjack or roulette. It's whether they'll survive another night. Think about it. In a city that attracts over 30 million visitors a year, residents are sleeping in tunnels designed for floodwater, under bridges, or in abandoned lots. Every choice is a wager. Do you risk the tunnels and hope the rain doesn't come? Do you pitch a tent in a park, knowing it might be swept away by morning? Do you stretch your last few dollars on food, or save them for the cheapest room you can find? These aren't strategies, they're survival odds, and they're stacked against the house. The cruel irony? Las Vegas doesn't lack money. Billions flow in from casinos, mega events, and luxury real estate. But wealth bypasses the people who need it most. Instead of investment in affordable housing, healthcare, or safety nets, resources chase ever bigger attractions. Tourists sip $25 cocktails, while just blocks away, families count pennies for a gallon of milk. For many, survival is no longer about dreaming of a better life. It's about not being erased. Without an address, you're invisible to employers. Without shelter, you're shuffled from block to block. Without dignity, you begin to disappear. From society's sight, and eventually from its conscience. And so the question remains: if Las Vegas, America's playground, the neon jewel of the desert, cannot protect its own people. What does that say about the future of cities across the country? Las Vegas is more than flashing lights. It's a mirror reflecting America's growing crisis. Tourists may still come, but locals are paying the price, with homes, dignity, and lives. What do you think? Is this Vegas's breaking point, or can the city find redemption? Comment below and subscribe for more.